Hi, everybody. I wanted to come on and talk about why grade levels on books don't matter. Kind of like why, um, kind of like in a way, why what curriculum you use doesn't really matter if you have an understanding of how things are put together. Okay, so a lot of times people feel like they have to be a slave to the curriculum or they have to follow it precisely as prescribed, and they don't have really the confidence to branch out, switch order in lessons, pull lessons out altogether, or maybe even pull in supplemental things, is because they lack that confidence because they don't know what they're going to miss. Well, you don't really know what you're going to miss because you really haven't looked at and mapped out a trajectory of what you want your children to learn. Really, you need to sit down, and before you pick curriculum, if nobody's ever told you this, right? There's a lot of curriculum videos on YouTube, and you think when I want to homeschool, I should go buy curriculum. No, you should not. When you want to homeschool, instead of going to go purchase something and looking at a bunch of videos on what other people are using, you need to ask yourself, what do I want to accomplish within the time frame that I'm going to homeschool? Mostly you're looking at a school calendar year, unless you pulled your child out mid-year. And then you also have to look at your long-term homeschool objectives as well, right? So am I homeschooling for the short term or the long term? Am I homeschooling for am I starting in the middle of the year? Am I starting at the beginning of a school year? Am I starting over the summer? All of those things play a role in how you're going to map out the trajectory of how you want your child to progress throughout that year and what you want the end result to be. Map this out first so that you can then use curriculum to plug it in as a tool versus using the curriculum as prescribed and only trusting that somehow by doing this grade level book that at the end you would have mastered everything you need to know for that grade level, when literally that's impossible because every curriculum uses a different scope and sequence than the next. And you're like, well, what is a scope and sequence? I'm glad you asked. Well, the scope and sequence is literally like the roadmap of what will be covered in a particular curriculum for each grade level of that curriculum. So, like if you're using Saxon Math, Saxon Math is what is it? Hoffman and Mifflin Company, Houghton and Mifflin. Look, I can't say it. They're, you know who they are, okay? So you can go on their website and you can literally print off the Saxon Math scope and sequence. On there, they're gonna have all the Saxon Math books that they publish, and they're gonna have it on like on one column, and then going across, they might have the different concepts that they want to cover, that you cover throughout the entire math curriculum, and they'll have like little X boxes or little stars on what's covered in that level. So if you know you're going to do Saxon's fourth grade math book, which is Saxon 5-4, which a lot of homeschoolers teach it in third grade, you know, that's how we do. It will show you every concept that will get covered in the Saxon 5-4 math book. If you look at those concepts, for instance, and then you look at uh, your state requirements, or you know, as a homeschooler, we don't have to follow it, but like what your state's your state's basically what am I thinking of? Your state standards. If you compare them tit for tat for what like a fourth grader is supposed to know, you're probably going to find that there's either going to be concepts that are taught within that Saxon 5-4 book that are not taught in the fourth grade at your local public school, or you're going to find that there's concepts on there that are taught, and then you're going to find that there's concepts that are introduced earlier, later. They're not going to be in sync with each other, okay? That's just how it is. And you're going to find that with be the case with whatever set of standards that you're choosing to use. You know, they're not going to always sync up. But you have to basically, instead of looking at, like I said, this is why you can't just say, I'm going to use this grade level book and at the end my child will know all of fourth grade math. No, you actually have to ask yourself, what is fourth grade math? What is the purpose of the grade? What is the intention of the grade? And out of the intention of the grade, where is my child at today You have to think about where your child is today on their skills and what skills they need to have mastered in order to be ready for the next level of whatever that is. So like I'm still going to keep using math for an example because it's a really easy example where kids typically follow a particular roadmap or trajectory. Math and reading, like math and language arts, those are two very laid out subject areas. When you're talking about your social studies and your sciences and everything else, that's really kind of like doesn't really matter. Actually, a lot of people don't know that, but it doesn't. It really doesn't. It'll get covered. Either you're gonna have complete holes and gaps, and your child's not gonna know the Gettysburg Address, or something like that, or never learned anything about the Golden Gate Bridge or something, or never heard of the first emperor of China. It's gonna be like that. But they have books out there where they can learn this on their own as adults because you taught them how to read. That's why that's important. Math is important, reading is important, because that's how you will fill in your learning gaps that everyone will have. Okay, so back to what I was saying. So the trajectory that you need to plan out before you start picking curriculum. Okay, so when it comes to K through third math, that's like a section of math, right? And same thing with language arts. And then you have fourth and fifth grade, and then you have sixth through eighth grade, and then you have ninth through 12th grade. That's pretty much how the major bodies of knowledge areas are made up. And it literally, and within those grade bands, doesn't matter when you have mastered something, as long as you master it by the last year of that grade band. So by K through third, you're supposed to be able to be ready to do certain concepts within mathematics. Okay, you should have all your number sense down. You should have all your basic arithmetic functions down. So you should have addition, subtraction, basic multiplication, basic division facts, all mastered. That is the purpose of K through third grade math. It really doesn't matter how long it takes them to do that, as long as you're looking at it and saying by the end of third grade, we want to have these basic concepts mastered. Okay? When you get to fourth and fifth grade math, is introduction to fractions. It's long division, and it's introduction to fractions, long division, multiple digit multiplication. Okay, that's what you need to have mastered for fourth and fifth grade, because then when you get to sixth through eighth grade, and I would even say sixth and seventh grade, you want to learn fractions, decimals, and percents, ratios. Okay, fractions, decimals, percents, and ratios. Once you have mastered fractions, decimals, percents, and ratios, you are ready to start algebra. That can be eighth grade. That might not be to the end of eighth grade. If it's at the beginning of eighth grade, then you're starting Algebra 1 in eighth grade, and you have an early high school credit. If not, you'll be starting it as a freshman in ninth grade, and that's fine too. And then that is when you will just go in a sequence. You're either going to do Algebra 1, Geometry, Algebra 2, Pre-Calculus, Calc 1, Advanced AP Calc, whatever, or you're going to be doing Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, Consumer Math. It all depends on however you want to, but that's how that's going to go. So I just basically told you the purpose of the grade levels, essentially, when it comes to mathematics. Like, that's literally what you have to know. That is the point of it. So whatever you use curriculum wise will be a tool for K through third, to make sure that by the end of third, when you look at the scope and sequence for the materials, the curriculum that you selected, that you realize that your child should have had reviewed, been introduced to, and have mastered basic arithmetic functions of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. That's what you're going to be looking for when you pick a curriculum. One that you and your child enjoy teaching and learning from, and that will master those skills. review those skills. And if the curriculum that you chose doesn't have enough review, you should know that those are the basic 4 functions that you're going to need to review. Of course, your child needs to learn how to read an analog clock and do liquid measurements and all these other little things that are in there too. I'm not saying that those things don't need to be taught too. I'm just talking about like the basic core purposes that you should be thinking about how you want to map out your trajectory for your child. When you have an advanced child, this helps you be able to kind of gauge like where you need to move up to. Like if you're finding that your child has those things mastered, you know, you can stop looking at math books that are 3rd grade and below and start looking at math books that have maybe a 4th grade or above level on it. Okay, check out the scope and sequence of that curriculum provider to see if they're going to be covering the material you need to, because that's important, because Singapore math, their scope and sequences are very different than scope and sequences of American math programs. It just is. They learn addition and multiplication simultaneously and subtraction and division simultaneously. So you're going to see those concepts in the 2nd grade books, 3rd grade books. You're going to see stuff that we don't see until later because their scope and sequences of when they introduce things tie together differently. And like I said, this will just help you making sure that you're where you need to be. Okay. I wanted to bring all this up because I see people, I think, fearful in the homeschool community, and I'm not even sure sometimes it's just new homeschool moms. We have a huge influx of new homeschool moms over the last 2 years, but I think even I've seen some people I think who've been on this bandwagon for at least 3 to 4 years still kind of almost afraid of the curriculum. Like, I can't stop using this program that we hate because I don't want my child to have gaps. Well, what gaps do you think they're going to have? Have you asked yourself what needs to be covered? Have you decided when you need to cover certain things before you started using the I think you need to take some time off. Take some time out. Take a time out and think about the goal for that year. Just look at the goal. Set some goals. Set your own learning objectives. Literally write them down. And periodically, quarterly, try a semester, bi-semesterly, semesterly, go through your goals that you wrote down and see where you're at as far as meeting those goals. And then evaluate at the end of the year. Okay? Have you met those objectives? Set some objectives and literally work from those. Don't work from the curriculum company's goals. Work for the goals of the child you have in front of you, because curriculum is a tool. Okay? It's a tool. Your child is an individual with unique needs. Okay? Those needs might be to slow some things down. But then if you're worried about being behind and you won't slow down for them to master certain concepts because you missed the point that it doesn't really matter when you've mastered addition, subtraction, and multiplication in K through 3rd. As long as you get there by the end of 3rd, you're probably going to not be behind. It's a good measurement to make sure that you're somewhat on a trajectory path that's going to, by 8th grade, mean that when you hit 9th grade, you should be able to be at a high school level of mathematics or high school level of language arts. That's going to ensure that, unless you're dealing with a child who has different learning needs, specific learning needs, special learning needs, that's a totally different trajectory. And within those type of situations, I don't recommend that you kind of stick with like what I described with like the grade bands. I think with that, you need to ask yourself, is this child making improvements upon themselves? So like where they're starting from, are they making measured progress, incremental progresses from where they were like today to where they're going to be like 6 months from now? So it's not about necessarily staying on par with any particular set of standards, but more or less just showing that they've made some type of measured progress where they need to be. And some of those progresses might not even be academic. It might just being able to, sit and concentrate, become accustomed to the academic environment, social things. Some people are working with language delays and things like that they have to work on. Are they making progression with that? These are things you want to celebrate with those children when they make these measured progresses, just as if you were a child who finished the entire math book. Okay, you want to celebrate those wins. Okay, so this is hopefully helpful to somebody. I don't know, but I see people spinning their wheels out there in homeschool land. And I just want you to slow it down and think about what is the purpose. Oh, real quick, I just want to, how I kind of laid out the math. I'm going to kind of break down what I think some of the main points of language arts are. And that is with K through second grade, the focus should be phonetic reading. Okay, so once you've mastered phonics between K and second grade, then I think you can move on to spelling instructions, starting spelling instructions after that. Okay, so yeah, I don't start spelling until second grade. And then with my older children, they actually never did a spelling curriculum because that just happened to be an area of their lives where they were gifted at and just it didn't work out. Couldn't find anything that would work for somebody who knew how to spell already. And that's what happened with that. My third learner deals with some dyslexia, and spelling is her hardest subject. So it's kind of like we do the best we can in that area. And like I said, I deal with measured progress against her previous learning. So if, even if she's running behind grade level with the spelling, if she's in a better place this year than she was last year, then we celebrate. That's a win. That's how I look at it in regards to the spelling. She's pretty much on par with her reading skills. We went through intensive phonics, Orton Gillingham, multisensory, hit it hard. Okay, we hit it up hard for like a good 4 years. So she put in that work so that she can keep up with reading on her grade level. She fought hard for that, and I'm so proud of her. But yeah, so K through second is mastering phonetic reading. You should come out somewhere around beginning third grade instruction, being able to read those beginning thin chapter books, and introducing spelling somewhere around second grade. You can start grammar, gentle grammar, between first and second grade. I like first language lessons just because it's kind of oral and you kind of just like doing the chants and stuff like that. But I don't really actually expect the child to be able to parse a sentence and break everything down in a sentence until about third grade. That's when grammar is legit real. So that's when I introduced that. And that's also paragraph writing or composition, writing composition. We start that at about third. Fourth and fifth grade, we're introducing them to basic essay structure. But 6th through 8th grade is when I really want to make sure that we introduce the various different essay styles, like a narrative, a compare contrast, persuasive, expository, all that stuff. That's 6th through 8th grade. They're going to get their little taste of that. And then in high school, they're going to get into that literary analysis and literally having to convince me of a point about a piece of literature. That's literary analysis is what we do in the 9th through 12th grades, because that's what they're going to do when they take English composition. They're going to have to argue a point. So they're going to have to know that ethos, pathos, all that rhetoric, all of that jazz, that's going to come up in freshman composition. So you're kind of just preparing them for that battleground. And spelling usually is done by 8th grade. Some people do spelling in 9th grade, but it's not typical. Typically, you change spelling somewhere around 6th grade for a lot of people, and they change from spelling to vocabulary focus. If you're doing Latin, you probably started Latin years ago, so you might not even do a special vocabulary. But typically, for people who aren't like introducing Latin in like elementary years, you tend to switch to a vocabulary focus in about 6th or 7th grade, and you usually go over Greek and Latin roots type thing, right? And then with reading, like I said in the beginning, it's phonics, and then in third 4th, 5th grade, you're in reading comprehension. Okay, so it's like, what do you understand from what it is that you read? And then after you go past that, then you're looking at not just reading comprehension, but kind of like analyzing what it is that you've read. Okay, so that's when you want to start getting into, comparing this character to that character. What type of characters? Can you tell me the plot, the setting, the rising action, the falling action, all of that. So hopefully this helped. Okay, it doesn't really matter what programs you use to do these things that I mentioned. It really doesn't. Use the one that works best for you, and don't worry about what it is that you selected. Set some goals, and as long as you met your goals at the end of the year, not finished the curriculum textbook, but met your goals, then you have completed the school year. That, and when you met your obligation to the state, which is in Georgia, 180 days of instruction. So either way, okay? So don't feel bad if you have an entire 50 lessons left in a curriculum book at the end of the school year. That doesn't matter. Did you meet your goals?